Welcome to the Raleigh Board of Selectmen meeting for February 5th, 2018, at 7 p.m. at the Town Hall, 139 Main Street in Raleigh. I call the meeting to order. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Here, why don't you put that here unless somebody comes, sits down.
Okay, I'd like to first announce that this meeting is being video and audio recorded and televised live on Raleigh Community Media. From 7:05 to 7:10, I'll try to stay on time for public comment. At 7:15, we have an appointment, and we have a 7:30 appointment, and we will get into general business. General business number 1. Dear friend in Scouting, I would be greatly honored if you could attend the Eagle Scout Court of Honor for Nathaniel Richardson Smutch. The ceremony will be held at 3:30 p.m. on the 24th of March, 2018, at the First Congregational Church of Raleigh, 151 Main Street, Raleigh, Mass. 01969-1504, to honor Nathaniel, who has received the highest award in Scouting, the Eagle Scout Award. I hope you will be able to attend and recognize this achievement. If you would like to make a presentation, please inform me before the ceremony and I will recognize you. Thank you. Yours truly, George Pachenka, Scoutmaster, Troop 15, Raleigh, Mass. Second letter. Dear friend in Scouting, I would be greatly honored if you could attend the Eagle Scout Court of Honor for Justin David Flodman. The ceremony will be held at 3:30 p.m. on the 24th of March, 2018, at the First Congregational Church of Raleigh, 151 Main Street, Raleigh, Mass. 01969-1504, to honor Nathaniel, who has received the highest award in Scouting, the Eagle Scout Award. I hope you will be able to attend and recognize this achievement. If you would like to make a presentation, please inform me before the ceremony, and I will recognize you. Thank you. Yours truly, George Pachenka, Scoutmaster, Troop number 15, Raleigh, Mass. The Eagle Scout is the highest achievement for a Scout, and I'm proud to say that my grandson is an Eagle Scout, and my another younger grandson is close to getting his Eagle.
This is what, George's 39th or 40th?
Oh, no, I thought it was up over 70.
Oh, maybe, that's right.
I thought it was up over 70.
I'll give you a motion, Mr. Chairman, to issue a citation for each one of the boys. Congratulations on a wonderful job. A lot of hard work.
I'll second that.
Motion has been made and seconded to have a presentation for the both Scouts on the 24th of March at the Congregational Church.
And if you don't want to go, Mr. Chairman, I'll go in your stead, if you
We
wish.
could go together.
Oh, we'll go together? Okay, that sounds good.
Both of
I'll
us
go.
making a presentation, that would be nice.
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
They usually have a nice ceremony. And we're coming up on public comment. Larry?
Yes, Larry White, Central Street. I just want to make some more comments on the Triton budget. I looked at the last 4 years, 2015, 16, 17, and 18. Their Triton operating budget has gone from 37 million to 39 million. Okay, level service. Their net operating assessment has gone from 27 million to 29 million, a 2.251 million increase. In the meantime, for those 4 periods, the student enrollment has decreased by 288 students. Now, I know you're going to discuss the Triton budget later on, but what I want to emphasize is that for their first option, which is what they would probably consider draconian, where they cut 51 teachers to make Rowley's general assessment impact of an assessment of 200,000, where we're only contributing 50% of our net growth, and the 2.5% increase. For their scenario 2 reduction of Rowley's assessment of 423,000, that takes up all of our new growth, all of our 2.5% increase. So in other words, all Rowley is doing with our new growth and tax increases and stuff like that is paying for Triton. We're not doing anything for Rowley. If we go to their scenario 1, where they don't lay off anybody, we go to almost $1 million for a Rowley assessment. We can't afford it. I went back and looked at what fiscal 18 is and what Rowley did for level services. Okay, not including the 2.5% or 2.25% increase in wages and stuff like that, but just the expenses. Okay, what Rowley, the whole town, okay, went for. Okay, now Triton might say, oh, we've got special education, we've got, other things that are beyond our control. Yeah, Rowley has the same thing. We have snow and ice removal, we have veterans, we have library, we have other things that we don't have a control over. And you know how much our budget increased? $20,922. If Rowley can afford to reduce everything, so can Triton. And Rowley isn't in the position of funding everything for Triton. I'll have more to say in the other stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
My
Your name,
name-
please.
Yeah, Tammy Graves of 624 Weathersfield Street. I had emailed the Board of Selectmen on Thursday, and I was just waiting to hear back. And I know that this is not on the agenda, but I wondered if my concern is the large structure solar panel that is proposed to be built across the street from my home. And I'm just here to see if there's any way that the Board of Selectmen can meet with myself and several of my neighbors who are also abutters of this proposed facility at some point in time to try to give us some time. We're basically looking for respect in regards to this project as homeowners that are very concerned about our property values being greatly diminished. And we just wondered if there was at some point in time, preferably sooner than later, because they're really trying to quickly push this solar farm through, if we could have a meeting to see if there's something that the selectmen could do, or just at least listen to our concerns as neighbors and abutters of this facility.
The only thing I will say right now is that this is a public comment time where you
Right.
can offer a comment.
Yeah.
We won't respond to your comment
Okay.
right now. But if you would submit something in writing, then we
So I did.
can
I
review it
submitted.
for
I
the agenda.
emailed the selectmen on Thursday, and my neighbor, Mr. Burns, actually brought a letter up here on Thursday. And I know that one of the other neighbors also emailed. I haven't received a response. That's why I'm here tonight just to see when can I do this, or when can I meet with you guys, or when can we all, as neighbors who are very, very concerned about this and our property, meet with you guys?
Under the state rules for the agenda, it's a public meeting law, and we have to post our agenda 48 hours before the meeting, so that means that our meeting agenda has to be posted on Thursday with the town clerk.
Right. And that's
So
why
that
Mr.
by
Burns-
Thursday, it was already set.
That's why Mr. Burns actually wrote his letter and drove up here to make sure that he had it here before the town hall was closed.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, if I may, we can't, just because we get it in, we have to post it by noontime on Thursday.
Okay.
But then the chairman actually has to review everything that goes on the agenda, so they need some time to do that. So we are confirming receipt that the materials were dropped off and emailed. They have been reviewed. The selectmen have the large packet
Okay.
that they go through every week from all aspects of the town. So it has been received. It could not be on that agenda because I
Okay.
wouldn't have any time to review it and be
Correct.
posted.
And
So it has been
I
received.
understand that.
I just
because
wanna
I did
confirm
see
that.
where it was not listed on the agenda, but myself, and I'm sure that the many other people that are here are just wondering, like, how do we go about doing that? Like, will somebody contact myself, Mr. Burns, or whoever to say, can we add this to the agenda? Can we have a special meeting? I don't know the proper technique of how it's done, but we would just like to be allowed to voice our concerns.
Mr. Chairman, it would be up to the board. The chairman decides when things are scheduled and what materials are being scheduled. So I would be back in touch with you after he's had a chance to review everything and make a decision. And if you're to be scheduled, that would be the proper process.
If it won't be on the 12th, then we don't meet on the 19th. So it will either be on the 12th or the 26th.
Because our concern is that the individual on 623 Weathersfield Street who is building this is really trying to hurry and get this thing pushed through. And we've been, the multitude of us have been at the conservation meetings and the planning board meetings, and it was recommended to us that we move forward to the selectmen. So if it could be put on a meeting as soon as possible, just because
Okay,
we're all very
I'll have-
careful.
The planning board's not going to be hurried into issuing a decision, I can tell you that right now. As you probably know, I'm a member of the planning board.
Right. Thank you very much.
I'm just saying that the planning board is not going to be pressured into issuing a hasty decision on
I know,
this.
thank you. I know that
We
we
appreciate
submitted
that.
another plan.
Excuse me, if you'd address to me on the agenda items, and the public comment period is over, and I have to move on to my agenda items. We have a 7:15 appointment with Attorney Jill Mann and Robert Nixon to discuss Meadows Lane and town-owned land off of Meadows Lane. Attorney Jill Mann sent the attached email message to the Board of Selectmen. Her client is interested in purchasing town-owned land. Attorney Mann will discuss this with the board. Assessors, property cards on this land are included in the packet. The selectmen should check with the planning board on the subdivision approval of Meadows Lane to see if there are any requirements on the town's part. The disposition of real property falls under general laws, chapter 30B, section 16. Jill?
Yes. Good evening, Jill Mann here on behalf of Rob Nixon. Rob apologizes for not being able to be here this evening, but he had a commitment in Idaho, so he's not coming back until tomorrow's good. He could not be here.
Excuse me, can you leave that door open? It's a public meeting.
Just has to be open.
Just a little bit, just a quiet. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's good.
So this particular request is relative to some lots that the town owns off of Meadows Lane. So what I did was I just thought it'd be better to give you a visual. So,
Yeah, you give to us, we'll pass them around.
oh, great, thank you. I'm gonna give a couple to you.
Mr. Chairman, we have a circulation sign-in sheet somewhere. Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Basically, what this plan is just the original subdivision plan, showing where the lots are located off of Meadows. So as you can see, the pink is all of those lots that you actually own. They range from 0.55 acres to 0.2 acres. They're fairly small parcels of land. I don't know if anybody remembers at the time when they were created, when Meadows Lane was created, it's just there were these extra pieces that didn't fall within the right-of-way, and that's what you see here. There also was a very large parcel deeded to the town, which I am assuming was part of an open space subdivision. I'm not 100% sure of that, but I believe so, because it was like 5.5 acres of land
Where is that?
on the other side. Right
Oh, the
here.
other side of the road. Oh. I don't know if that was an OSRD.
I don't know, you know,
I
it
mean,
didn't appear to be, because you can see it on the plan, but it was just 5.5 acres. So it was, and I believe you still retain it. I didn't see deed out, but it's hard to search the town of Rowley for something like that. Then what I did was I did include, because I always think it's, I'm just going to give some to Ms. Egan too, just so they have it for a file, and then I'll give the rest to you. So what I have is just a deed showing the conveyance into the town. Just because I think it's important to see it.
Was that parcel, the big parcel, was that one that was donated to the Conservation Commission, maybe?
I don't know. I don't know.
Is it wet, do you know if it's wetlands, or if
I
it's,
can't
you
tell. I
don't have any idea?
It's not entirely wet.
Because sometimes, you know, they get a subdivision, and whatever they don't want, they donate to the town as a conservation piece, and they have to pay taxes.
Right, and that's what I thought.
I think
You know,
that's probably what it
I said to
is.
Mr. Pierce, maybe, but I'm
I was
unsure.
not on the planning board at the time, but, you
It
know,
was
this
96.
issue came up about these very parcels, came up about, Debbie, what, 10, 15 years ago?
Yeah,
And
yes.
it went to
in
town
connection with,
meeting, and the town meeting voted against it.
Yeah,
So we
So I'm
should
trying
bear
to-
that in mind before we go
I'm
any
trying to
further.
remember, and I just recall something in this area with
Oh,
respect
no,
to this.
the exact same parcels
Was it
are
the
there.
exact same parcel
Interesting.
for a parcel on, through Gerzak Lane?
Well, the parcels were running along the edge of the meadows,
Yep.
these pink parcels. And the reason that someone wanted to buy them is they were interested in developing the back parcels, which are part of the Gerzak subdivision,
Okay.
and which are landlocked. And so they needed access, they needed frontage, basically, in order to develop them.
And I'll show you the pieces we
And
actually have.
it went to town meeting, and the town meeting voted against it. Now, I think the reason they did was because the subdivision identifies these pink parcels as conservation land. Have you seen that? No. Oh, yeah, I remember that clearly. That's not indicated here, but I know there's a subdivision plan which says that
That is, yeah, that
these
is.
parcels are conservation land. And that's, I believe that's why the people at town meeting decided to respect that designation and not overturn it. So that's the history of these parcels.
Yeah, and I
I think
couldn't,
you're right, I was here on the board at the time.
and I
that was
couldn't find
taking
anything
place.
like that, because I do have the subdivision plan. That's one of the sheets of it that shows it, and I didn't see any designation for
I
it.
clearly
but I
recall
don't know.
that now.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'd have to do some research, I think, to try
Yeah,
to.
because that's the subdivision plan. Maybe the approval, I can grab the approval to see, but there was nothing in the plan. You know. But
I do remember that town meeting simply because of Stan Gerzak was my son's soccer coach at the time. So I remember him developing that
Sure.
property.
see, we don't have a landlocked parcel. I'm going to show you the parcels that we have actually have entitlement to. So, thank you. So we have rights to develop the land that is 234 Haverhill Street. And that's the piece that actually accesses the Gerzak property. So this is not a landlocked parcel. Yeah. So it isn't a landlocked parcel for us. This is not, the only means would not be over those parcels. It would most certainly make it a better, development option. I'm not going to tell you it wouldn't. I mean, that's the point of coming here, is because we would prefer to be able to develop it and to take those buffer pieces and use them. And the reason why I'm not so sure that they're conservation pieces is because I don't believe any of that runs even near any kind of wetland or any issue. Now, that doesn't mean anything. I'm going to go back and do the research like Mr. Pierce suggests. However, we are here this evening to, begin our investigation relative to securing the possibility of title from those town-owned parcels to Mr. Nixon. And again, it's not all the parcels, because we're not looking at the large one. It's just simply those 4 that you see identified in the first plan.
So this is, excuse me, this parcel is between where Midway
Yes, so if you, On
and
your
Meadows
plan.
Lane is, this is 234.
right, so this is, right, so when you come into Meadows.
Right.
It's right here. So you can actually even see it on the, on your plan with the pink.
Mm-hmm.
So if you actually put the
Oh, yeah,
plan
right
down,
there.
you can see that it's this odd-shaped lot. So it's very clear to me that it's the time when they were developing Meadows, that lot sat over on the other side, and they just did the right-of-way along and up the side. And you can see you can see where the most of the wetlands lie, and they don't lie anywhere on this side of the property. They lie all on the, I think it's the north side. I'm not 100% sure what side that is. I don't see an arrow.
I think that's the east.
Is it the east?
I think it is.
Yeah, I can't tell, and there's no north arrow. Do you
No.
see a north arrow? Oh, yes, there is. There's a
There is?
north arrow right there. So it isn't, it is, I think it is, okay, it's the, so it's the east, it's the west, right?
In other words, this piece, this L-shaped piece, you don't have frontage on that, is that because
Oh, I
of
thought you were
that?
talking about the property, the other property.
Oh,
In other words, there's no front,
on the
because of
west
this
side,
piece of
yeah. Yeah,
property. you don't-
100% correct.
You don't have frontage.
so the question was, where
And
is
are
that
you looking to
place?
subdivide this lot?
This one, mm-hmm,
In other words, I assume that's a house there?
it is,
So
that house is.
you're gonna subdivide this, so therefore you don't have frontage either if you subdivide the
You would
lot.
actually, the only way to really develop these, if you don't get the frontage off of Meadows, would be then to do a subdivision road.
How big a parcel is this?
Together, they are, oh, it's 18, it's, my secretary was supposed to write it down, but didn't. On one of them, it is written.
Is it
It's
written?
163,350
6 acres,
and 88, so it's 2 acres and 4 acres. So it's about 6 acres.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now, is the plan to build single-family homes?
Yes, it is.
So how many
Well, it
lots?
depends. So we just don't know. It would depend upon whether or not we could get the frontage
Right.
from the town.
So essentially, you...
No more than, it would be,
Assuming 3 or 4,
it probably 4, it could possibly be 5. Because the front lot. So you maintain the front lot, and then you would get lots
Okay.
back here.
so you're talking about having 3 or 4 driveways onto Meadows Lane, is that
Yes,
right?
yes.
And this is not going to be developed under 40B, it's to
No,
be under our zoning?
no, we're not, no desire to do that.
Yeah, I guess we gotta determine if those lots are in fact conservation land or not. What I would recommend you do on your own is tomorrow go over to see the Conservation Commission or call Brent,
I could call Brent, sure.
and he should be able, I'm sure if they are conservation, he will know it.
Yeah, and you know, it's
Guarantee he will.
Well,
Rob had a conversation with him, but I will do the research on the title. I mean, I did look at it. Like, you have the deed, nothing is said about it, and that occurred after the subdivision approval. So if you were going to create a restriction, you would have created it in the granting document, because you can't create it pursuant to a plan. It has to be pursuant to a written document. And I couldn't find any restrictions, but I'm gonna look. I'm gonna check the approval, because if the approval made it a condition, then I would know. But it wouldn't, just initial impression, it wouldn't make sense to me, because you can see there's no wetland there, so it doesn't,
well, but
it could be open space, but I've never seen
Which is a
tiny
town,
open
is this a
spaces
town
like that.
parcel here?
Yes,
Yeah,
so
I
this
assume
this is the town parcel, all
that's,
of
looks
this.
like marshland or
yeah,
something.
it looks pretty wet on the other
Oh,
side.
almost certainly, that big parcel.
Yeah, so I think that's why that's all, and I think this is probably meant to be attached at the time to, as part of this.
Well,
I don't know.
I don't know.
the subdivision roadway goes up.
Seems to me, I'm thinking back a long time ago, my mind's getting muddy, but I
It was a
believe
long
there was an issue, I believe the Conservation Commission had involved, because this parcel here was considered to be, even though the road went through there, because nobody else would want it for anything, you know what I mean? It was considered to be, but I could be wrong on that too.
No, I definitely agree with you that when, I'm not agreeing with the conservation,
Right,
they have
right,
to do the
yeah.
research, but I agree with you 100% that when they created that roadway, they didn't know what to do with the leftover pieces, because they had to meander it slightly. And when they did that, they created that because Ms.
Yeah, it's just a
Not
strange,
Gouliette, I can't remember how to say her name, but the woman who owns actually 234 Haverhill Street, she didn't sell to the developer, so as a result, he had to honor her property line, and they couldn't come in with the roadway. And they didn't want to, I guess they didn't want to sit on top of her with the road, except for certain places. Because she does abut it, she abuts it in discrete corners.
Yeah. This lot was laid out before the,
She's got frontage, she has frontage on
That
Havel Street.
pre-existed meadows, yes. Exactly.
I guess we can,
Oh, but I definitely, it's a good point, I have to look at it.
Determine the status, but, and I don't know what the legal effect of it is, but I distinctly recall that they were identified as conservation land. I remember it was talked about at town meeting.
yeah, there was a vote at town meeting, and I remember it was turned down.
yeah.
I don't remember all the arguments.
Yeah.
Is this something that you're looking to purchase, or is that just,
Yeah. We'd like to acquire it from the land, from the
Well, how
town.
would the value of the land be determined? I mean, we'd have to do an appraisal.
Normally, you have to do an appraisal, and then you typically go out to bid under 30B, Section 16.
I think though, if it's property now, thank goodness they revised that so that low-value property didn't have to go out to bid every time. So I think if it's under 50,
I believe
Is
it's
it 50?
35,
35, okay.
But I don't know if there's any value because
Well,
I don't know and they won't let you use the assessor's records. You have to get an
to get a
appraisal.
real
there's
appraisal.
probably very little value if you just look at those lots in isolation, because you can't build anything on them, they're not buildable lots.
No.
But it seems to me they're of great value to your clients, so I don't know how the determination is made as to what the value is, but it seems to me that if the town's gonna sell this, we ought to get something significant in return and not some nominal value.
But we'd have to look into that,
Yeah.
and have to call the Inspector General and just get some guidance on it. But I guess, I'll look up the town meeting article and send that to Attorney Mann tomorrow. I can.
Yeah, I can't
probably
recall
find
what price was put on
Yeah.
that proposed
But
purchase.
I will, now that this is coming back.
Yeah.
I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, that maybe we continue this, have her come back in a couple of weeks.
Sure.
And maybe at that meeting on the 26th, did you say?
26th.
In the meantime, our people will,
We'll both do our due
your
diligence.
people can do a little more, so we really have an idea of what we're dealing with here before we make a
Yeah,
decision.
I'll definitely bring you information relative to the conservation, and then Ms. Egan.
Meanwhile, we'll
she'll send
find
you
out,
that.
the town administrator will find out what.
But I would say you should contact the planning board office as well and see what they have on file.
No, I definitely will, because I think it would be in there, either in the minutes of the approval or the actual approval itself.
But it was on the plan, as I recall.
I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
Yeah, based on.
Maybe I'm wrong, it was a long time ago and my brain's getting muddy too, so.
Based on dates on here on the assessors, information that it should be around 2006, 2007.
Oh, 1990, oh, no, 1996 was when that plan was approved.
Was it approved in 96?
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Oh.
Yeah, it's April
1996.
22nd.
I didn't think it was
96.
voted that long.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so then I will see you on the
26th.
26th. Thank you very much, appreciate your time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care then. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Wow, we're running pretty close to time.
Joe, you're right, you're good.
We have a 7:30 appointment with Attorney Phil Silverman and Joseph McCarthy of Ipswich Pharmaceutical Associates to discuss medical and adult use marijuana dispensary plans. Attorney Phil Silverman and Joseph McCarthy are here tonight to update the Board of Selectmen on their marijuana dispensary plans. On December 11th, 2017, the Board of Selectmen voted to issue Ipswich Pharmaceutical Associates a letter of non-opposition to operate a registered marijuana dispensary in Rowley. Attorney Silverman has also submitted a draft host agreement. This agreement will need to be reviewed by the town's attorney. That's great. We're getting into, I read a whole pamphlet on the how to, and what to. and-
That's what we're here to talk about.
Whoa,
Okay,
please.
thank you. I'm Phil Silverman. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Vicente Cedarberg. My firm is, it's a national law firm, and all we do is work with communities to bring marijuana companies into the community and work in a way that complies with state law and local law so that it can work in these communities as opposed to just sort of trying to force your way in and do something that nobody wants. We try to make this work for everybody. What I'd like to do first, I'm going to give you some information and we'll go through it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ready to go. So, what I wanted to give you something, a little bit of more background, because I know you've heard from this company before, and just try to tell you where the company is right now and what we're looking at.
Before you start,
Please.
excuse me, can you confirm exactly which storefront you're looking at? I go up and down Route 1 all the time, and I'll tell you, but there's car dealers moving around out there. I'm totally confused as to exactly.
We have a lease at 116 Newburyport Turnpike at the Adams Mall.
You're still at the Adams Mall?
Correct. And we have a,
That's the front of the mall, right? Not the
correct, at the
not
front
rear.
side.
At the left-hand side of that?
Second in the left-hand side.
Second in from the end on the south side. Okay, no, very
Okay.
good, thank you.
Thank
Didn't mean to
you.
interrupt, but
Thank
just
you.
so we know what we're talking about.
So, the board was kind enough to state non-opposition to operating the medical dispensary here the last time that Mr. McCarthy was here. I think you may have been aware that Mr. McCarthy had also received a similar non-opposition in the town of Ipswich. And we were looking at one point at perhaps running medical dispensaries at both of those locations, not unlike you might see a CVS pharmacy in one town and in the next town. Again, my firm is sort of familiar with the market. We represent 30 other companies trying to open these businesses in Massachusetts, so we know what's going on in the Massachusetts market. And we've really determined that it doesn't make sense probably to operate one here and operate in Ipswich. You'll be competing against yourself, and it just doesn't make a ton of sense in that regard. So we're really looking to operate one. And I think what we found out is the town of Ipswich has no interest in seeing adult use recreational marijuana sold at that location. I will tell you that in my former career before I got into this, I was a bankruptcy lawyer. I would be crazy to advise my client not to keep all of its options open. I think that he has to look at the possibility of selling in the recreational market. If he doesn't, and others do that surround him, I think it potentially could be very difficult to survive, notwithstanding the fact that medical will survive because there's a 20% tax on recreational, and a lot of medical patients will prefer to just stay medical and keep their medical card to save that 20% on their medicine. So, but nonetheless, I think he needs to pursue this recreational market. Ipswich doesn't seem inclined to do it. If the town of Rowley is interested in doing that, I think we would move the operation here. This is where we would like to operate. So let me try to give you some sense of what that would mean for the town. Apart from the fact that I think you're probably looking at 7 to 10 jobs in that particular facility. Again, this is only dispensing that we're talking about. We're not talking about cultivating there or manufacturing products there. It's just the dispensing. The other thing that we would be talking about are certain fees and taxes that would be paid to the town. You may be aware, and I think you are aware, in terms of the medical operations, that the town is allowed to charge, not charge, there's a community impact fee that companies are allowed to pay to the towns, can be up to 3% of gross revenues. And Mr.
I'm sorry, is this medical or recreational?
It's both.
Both, okay.
It's both. And so Mr. McCarthy has proposed to the town to pay that maximum 3% for both. The other thing, though, on the recreational side, unlike the medical, is the town can also collect an additional 3% in taxes. So essentially, you can be getting 6% of the gross revenues of an operation like this. So let me try to give you, I'm reluctant to throw out numbers, but I like to give some people an idea of what I think we're talking about here. State of Colorado has about 3,000 dispensaries right now. And the most mundane of them still probably earns $2 to $3 million a year. Okay?
Their earnings.
Yeah, revenues,
Revenues.
gross revenues, okay? In Massachusetts, we have about 1 million more people in the population, and right now, on the medical side, there's only 19 medical open. And I would be shocked if in the next year, when recreational comes about, that you'd see more than 25 open. And in the next 3 or 4 years, I'd be shocked if you saw more than 100 to 150 open. So that $2 million to $3 million number, I almost think it's a no-brainer in terms of this particular, if they were to open up there. I think a $5 million number is probably more likely, and I won't be shocked during the first few years of sales here if you saw $7 to $10 million of sales out of that facility. So you're talking about 6%. You could be talking, I think it's undoubtedly you'd be seeing well over $100,000 under any set of circumstances, and more likely in the first couple of years, $400,000 to $500,000. And I know I'm throwing around big numbers, but that's
For the impact fee or the tax, or tax?
I'm
or
doing
both?
6%.
6%.
3 and
Okay.
3.
So I think that's realistic. Do I think it will always be that amount? No. I think after 4 years down the road, all sorts of communities are going to start to realize that this is not particularly harmful. They'll see what Colorado and Washington have seen, that these places operate with a high degree of security and professionalism, and that there's nothing to fear, and they will have these places open up too. They'll also start to realize that all of the people in their towns, it's not like you're keeping it out of your town. They're just going to the other places to buy it and bringing it back and wondering, why are we not collecting the revenues and using them to do the things? If we're concerned about drug use, why are we not using the revenues to hire people to deal with that concern, hire more teachers, more police officers and such? So I think there's enormous financial benefits that are out there for a town like this. But let me talk about some of the things that I've given you in the materials that I've given you. I think the concern that everybody has is, yeah, we can see that there's a potential financial benefit here. What's the downside? And I won't get into too much of it because that's why I gave it to you, so you could take a look at it. The statistics on crime in the area of these places, I will tell you that in the area of the dispensary, crime goes down. And the reason is very simple. These are about the most secure facilities that you can imagine, okay? This is not, for example, on the medical side, this is not like your local pharmacy where anybody can just walk in. This is a limited access facility. To get the layout of the facility, and I won't go too much into this because it's a public meeting, but the layout, to get into this facility, you have to go in through what's called a sally port. It's what you would see in a prison. You have to go through a door, locks behind you. You don't get through the next door until your ID is checked, and then you're allowed in, and we limit the number of people in at any given time. We have on-site security. There's cameras in every single place where marijuana is handled or stored. There's exterior cameras as well, so that we can keep an eye on who is coming, who's on the exterior of the building at all times. The product does not stay out in the sales area at night when the business closes. The product goes into a secure vault. That's a hardened room, and it is put in safes within that room too. So if somebody decides that they want to come here in the middle of the night and get in, they'll spend a good 25 minutes trying to get through all the layers of security, and by that time the local authorities are notified. We've got 24/7 surveillance on this building, and it is extremely difficult to get into. And if you were to talk to all of the local police chiefs that are dealing with this already in the 19 communities where they're open, they'll tell you that these have not been a problem thus far. there's an anecdote about Brookline where there was a rash of burglaries around the neighborhood where the Brookline facility was, and the facility handed over their videotapes, and they actually caught the burglar because they need to make sure of and know what's going on in the exterior of this facility. So that's what you would see at a facility like this. And then we could talk, we would want to work with the local police chief to try to figure out, all right, do you want to see a police detail here at some hours? Do you want to see somebody outside? We generally don't have armed security. That's generally, I've been told by every professional that I've dealt with, that that's not a good idea. And so we don't recommend that. But quite frankly, we would want to talk to the police chief. And whatever the police chief says, that's what we want to follow, because they're the people that sort of know this area and can give us the best idea of what are the particulars here that we need to watch out for. So as I said, it's a very secure thing. And the other important thing that I think you'll see in those studies that everybody worries about is that there is not an increase in teen drug use as a result of having these facilities, okay? And in fact, what they found in Colorado is that teen drug use has gone down, which may seem counterintuitive, but I'll explain what I think the reason is according to them anyway. When you have these types of facilities, Colorado would tell you that the black market, where most teenagers buy their marijuana, has been cut by 50 to 70% in Colorado, because they have to compete all of a sudden with a place that is much better at doing this, creates a product that's safe, doesn't have harmful pesticides, etc. That's who they're competing against. And so the black market dries up. It's harder for kids to get a hold of this stuff, because to get into one of these places, this is not the type of a facility that's going to want to be handing marijuana out to people that shouldn't be having it. And the reason for that is this is a major investment for a company to get a license. You have to spend upwards of $4 to $5 million to create a cultivation facility that will grow this product and process this product and then get it into your store. You don't want to hand marijuana to a child and risk a $5 million license by doing that. It's dumb. And so that has not been a problem in Massachusetts, and I will tell you that that has not been a problem in Colorado. So there's been a lot of success, and I would urge you to look up what's going on in Colorado. You can hear anecdotes all over the place about things that go on, but look at Governor Hickenlooper out in Colorado, who was an opponent of legalization out there, has said the system's actually worked very well. It's made significant tax revenues for the state, and it's also not resulted in any of the problems that people were worried about at the beginning. So there have been regulations that were recently drafted about how to operate these. They're very similar to the medical regulations, just in terms of security, what you need to have in terms of cameras, that you need to have an alarm system that goes direct to the local police station and that has a backup just in case the primary system is disabled. The lighting on the exterior that you have to do, what you're allowed to do with signage. Just for your information, you will not see big neon signs for this company. You'll see a little sign in the front door that says Ipswich Pharmaceutical Associates. You will not be able to see in the front door or in a window. You're not allowed to have windows so that people can look in and see any of the product. The idea is to keep this discreet, quiet. People can access what they want, but it's done in such a way that you're just not inviting the bad behavior that people are concerned about. So those regulations are out. Everybody's sort of walking through them, but I think, like the medical program, Massachusetts has done a pretty good job. They have some of the strictest regulations in the country, and I think they're going to do a good job with it. So we want to talk to you about this, and we really just want to get some sense of whether this is something that you might be interested in hearing more about, that we can talk about going forward. Have your town council take a look at the host agreement. Again, we propose the maximum payment we could under it, and go from there. And I'll answer any questions you might have.
On the black market, I understand that black market in Colorado expanded dramatically. This is what I've read,
Yeah.
okay? And there's the other side of it also. We've learned, the chairman and myself, we went to Meyer a couple of weeks ago, and we sat through a part of it, we're talking about medical marijuana being grown compared to black market, because marijuana takes all the toxins out of the soil. So if black market really doesn't care where they're growing the product, okay, and dispersing it into the community. So you could get marijuana has all these toxins in it from not a medical facility or a recreational facility. So could be a black market product, could be very dangerous to the public.
There's no question. There's no question. This is, it's heavily regulated, tested. Everybody has to have an independent testing lab, test all of their product. So it's really, again, I don't, the public has voted on what they think about
Yes.
this. Younger people in particular. Some people like to have alcohol. These people like to have marijuana. So be it. But I think the idea is, let's give it to them in a safe outlet, in as healthy and sanitary a form as possible, and that's what the idea behind the regulations is.
But I'm concerned about the black market.
Well, you
okay?
think it would increase the black market, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Well, why would it do that? I mean-
It would increase it because of the taxes on it, on the legal portion of it.
Mm-hmm.
So the legal portion the price goes up because of the taxes, and on the black market portion,
What you'll find out,
the product is cheaper.
I'll send you
And-
the study.
Okay,
What happened is, that initially did happen, and then the price of marijuana, because of competition,
yes.
dropped. It was over $5,000 a pound, and now it's like $3,000 a pound. So it's very competitive now with the black market. And so you're asking, customers are saying, all right, do I want to go buy it from some illegal place where I don't know how they grow it and I don't know anything about it? And by the way, they don't do nearly as good a job with it as the legal places. do.
It's still
more
pouring
sophisticated.
over the border.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah,
I
and
understand.
I just came from the border just a few days ago. It's still pouring over the border.
I understand. I will try to send you, if I can, some of the information that we have on. These were police chiefs in Colorado that were saying the black market was drying up. So I don't want to go too far
Okay.
back and forth with you on that, but that's what we've been led to
But I
understand.
mean, it's still coming over the border.
I understand. I don't think anybody suspects that you'll eliminate the black market entirely
Yeah.
either. By the way.
But I'm just concerned about, the black market product contains toxins, and it's not, and plus, the marijuana that was around 40 years ago compared to the marijuana today is 500 times more potent
Yes.
today. So I have some concerns about it.
I understand.
My concern that I've been reading about is that there's been a change in policy in the administration in Washington. And before, in the previous administration, they were less concerned about enforcing the regulations on marijuana, the federal, and backing off, and now they're talking about more enforcement.
Let me give
Is that
you-
a real
I'll give
issue
you-
for Mr. McCarthy, or?
Here's what. So before there was what was called the Cole Memorandum, and the Cole Memorandum, the Justice Department put it together, and it kind of said, look, we've got all sorts of significant issues going on in federal law enforcement, gangs, we've got terrorism, we've got opiates that are being sold. And what it said was, we've only got limited federal resources. And so when looking at all these things we have, let's have some priorities for what we do. And what they said is, if you're operating your marijuana business in compliance with state laws, you are not a major priority of this office, because all of the other things that we need to do, that's where our resources need to be focused. Mr. Sessions decided to rescind that memo. However, it doesn't change the reality of what the situation is. You've still got terrorism, you've still got gangs, you've still got opiates, and they are all significantly more important. The U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts, Mr. Lelling, has said opiates are really his focus. If you are one of these businesses and you are trying to sell product out the back door to people who aren't supposed to be getting it, I suspect that is who the federal government will be going after. I suspect that most of what Mr. Sessions has said about it is a little bit of bluster. I don't really think they have a desire to spend a lot of time going after something that is viewed positively by well over 50% of the population in terms of the fact that it should be legal. And so California has legal recreational sales. We haven't seen any enforcement of it since Mr. Sessions rescinded his memo, and I really don't expect to see too much here either, unless companies start evading paying taxes, selling product in ways they're not supposed to.
I mean, I've seen a lot of shows where the marijuana, the miracle cure, and I have had issues where real people who had major problems with medical issues, and they took the marijuana, and it made a big difference in their life. It extended their life. It made a big difference in their life. So I'm well aware on that point.
Yeah, I will. I just tell you as an aside. I was a bankruptcy lawyer for 25 years, and my father-in-law is a doctor at Mass General Hospital, and he came to me one day and said, "I want to start up one of these medical marijuana businesses and help me." And my wife happens to be a pharmacist, and actually she's the one that he wanted the help from, but I had some skills that were helpful to him. And so we started getting into this, and he was explaining to me. He said, "All the people that say that marijuana can't cure anything, they're full of it." He says, "Everybody that says it can cure everything, they're full of it too."
Right.
He says it's somewhere in between, and if the federal government would just stop stopping the research and let it go, we'd figure out what it's good for and what it's bad. On the positive side, there's never been an overdose from marijuana, so that's where he comes out on that issue.
But as Selectman Snow did point out, though, that was a very real reality for me when we heard from that, that marijuana plant just soaks up the toxins, and that, if you got a chance of buying something that's cultivated and taken care of, and wow, what a difference.
And when it comes to prescriptions, I can't remember statistic exactly, but when they looked at medical marijuana and they looked at prescriptions, vast majority of the prescriptions were for other and not specifically for a medical condition.
Right.
So that concerns me, okay?
Right.
That somebody's going to get a prescription for other, and they're really looking towards recreational.
Yeah, I mean, again, we've the public has sort of spoken on the recreational
Right.
side. I think in Massachusetts, there's a list of, I think it's 14 conditions, but it does leave open, there is an other category, because it wants to allow doctors to have some leeway here. In other words, if they think that there's evidence that this can be helpful in a lot of different things, not just the 13 that are mentioned by the state in their law. And so they wanted to say, look, if you're a doctor and you think this might be helpful, go ahead, prescribe it. Chronic pain, for example, I don't think that's listed among the 13, but it's pretty well known that chronic pain is something that, in particular, there's an element called CBD, cannabidiol, which has a really positive impact on reducing pain.
Another thing I kind of scratch my head about is you pick up a pack of cigarettes and it says, smoking could be hazardous to your health, and now we're going forward with medical marijuana. So, it's kind of like an oxymoron here.
Yeah, well, the one thing I can tell you, part of that is because smoking, inhalation of smoke, is a terrible way to do this. If you're a medical patient and you're taking it by smoking it, you probably haven't talked to somebody like we'll have in Mr. McCarthy's company, because what they'll tell you is that the better way to do that from a health perspective is through a vaporizer pen or an edible, which is the other way to do it. And, but there's others. There's ointments, topical ointments. There's lozenges. There's sprays that go under your tongue. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but smoking is not the way to do it. That's for darn sure.
Many delivery systems, edibles, vapes, but the least desirable is certainly the smoking.
Yep,
So-
it is.
Well, I mean, this is something that needs to be discussed for the public to understand out there.
And that's something, that we will do. Again, what we're looking to do is both a medical operation and an adult use recreational operation. Part of the medical operation is that we have to have materials that we hand out to the patients and trying to explain all of this. And you can't You can't get everybody to forego smoking. There's some people that have historically used this, and that's the way they've done it. They like it for one reason or another, and they tend to want to continue to do it that way. So be it, but it's not what we would encourage on the medical side.
Now, back when you were here last fall, and the medical marijuana had been approved and set up by the state,
Yes.
has the recreational rules and regulations been promulgated by the marijuana
Commission,
commission?
as far as as far as I know, that they're working on it, and have they come to a
There's a
final
draft.
conclusion?
There was a
on-
draft that just came out really within about the last month that sort of lays out all the systems that we've talked about for security, for testing. It's very similar to the medical.
Medical.
Is there a
ensuring that-
deadline for them issuing that, or?
Yeah, it has to be it's supposed to be finalized by the end of March.
April 1st is,
Yep, April
and we have that municipal guidance document from the Cannabis Control Commission. The selectmen have received
Right,
that.
I have that.
And planning board has that as well. And so right now, we're just still at that point where we're still waiting from the state, but we've heard that they have guidelines.
Yeah,
And we're trying to follow those, and they've got the categories of different types
that's right.
of things that Attorney Silverman is saying.
Yeah, it's, and so we know there'll be some tweaks to the draft that was out there. We're all sort of in the process of making suggestions about what we think makes sense and what doesn't make sense, but we have a general idea. Your town council is very familiar with this, I'm sure. So, you know, we have a good idea of what it is. It's, as I said, it's all of the same types of testing procedures to ensure that the product you're getting is safe and approved by an independent testing lab. It's all of these minute details about how you have to set up your security and where you have to have cameras, and it's all the same as the medical in that regard. It's the strongest regulatory regimen in the country. In that
Yeah,
regard.
my question is, and I understand what the other selectmen are saying, those are kind of issues that are beyond our
Yeah, that's what I would.
scope. My question would be, Mr. McCarthy, is when you came in here before, and at that time you were talking about we're going to have the place in Ipswich, and you're going to have the place in Raleigh. The place in Raleigh was relatively close to the ice cream place.
Correct.
And when you discussed the issue with us, the idea was that you would not be open when the ice cream place was open, but during those hours, the customers would be referred to either, you'd be doing deliveries or whatever they allow in that regard, or they would be going down to the Ipswich facility. So now that you're not going to have the Ipswich facility, what are your plans for
We would
hours?
use that facility from the time that the ice cream location was open for deliveries, no retail whatsoever. What we would do is prepare deliveries, because patients are allowed to have their medicine delivered. What we would do is set forth a delivery system at that time.
People will get used to the hours and they'll understand that
They-
it's not open.
We're closed, and just like every
Can the
other...
recreational be delivered as well, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it can. And it will apply the same hours.
I just question, and obviously it's maybe not my place to question it, but I'm just concerned that over time, that kind of a restriction is going to be difficult to live with.
I understand.
That's just because of the location.
I understand. I mean,
For other reasons.
listen, I'll be honest with you. I think that what you might find over time is that the restriction is not necessary. What you'll see, you won't know what's going on at this facility. You'll see people walk in, you won't see anything outside, you'll see people walk out. The parking lot would be monitored so that you won't see people using this product in the parking lot, or for that matter, just hanging around the parking lot. We're going to keep people in and out of this place. So my sense is that eventually it becomes a non-problem when everybody can see, oh my gosh, we were so worried about this. It's just like any other business, and it's really not harmful. But I think at the beginning, I think we can live with that. And I think patients and other customers will get used to the hours, and they'll understand. Here's when I go, it's not open then.
So people will be able to call in and order recreational marijuana and have it delivered to them, is that what you're saying?
They will. And, the other thing is with deliveries is we might not deliver from this facility. We have another cultivation facility, and we may have other facilities in other communities that we could deliver from. And my sense is it would probably be easier for us to do deliveries from one of the other facilities, maybe. More likely where we're cultivating. It's just, why bring it from the cultivation facility to here and then drive it out again when you can just make one trip from the cultivation facility?
So so we've approved we had a letter of
Non-opposition.
non-opposition to this. Now, are you looking for a letter of non-opposition to the,
It's a little different on this side of things. They don't actually have a letter of non-opposition requirement. What you are required to get, however, is a community host agreement that deals with all of the operational issue, the fees that will be paid, and really any other issues that you want to put into it. And so
Does that deal with a specific site that you're going to operate from?
Yes.
Like the Adams Mall, that would
Yes.
say at the Adams Mall?
It's site-specific, yeah.
But that has to be approved by the planning board first, so,
Special permit?
right,
Yeah, we'd have to get that too.
before we enter into an agreement, or?
No,
No?
there's no requirement that it be done before. In fact, I mean, we're looking for some sense of whether this is something you're interested in that we can continue to talk to you about. I don't expect you to vote on this tonight. I understand this is the first time you've met me. It's the first time you've really taken up this issue. You're probably going to want to have a chance to talk to town council about it, and that's fine. We just want to have some sense of whether this is something that we should just go away, don't come back again, or can we continue sort of discussing it and see if we can make it work with you.
I have hired Bayside Engineering to do a full traffic report, a full study, everything that meets all the requirements when I spoke to Kirk to be done. That's already been slated and scheduled for the next 2 weeks. I met with the architect today to lay out design after I spoke with Mr. Ken, is that?
Ken Watt?
Ken Watt.
Okay. The building inspector, he told me to get the architect down there, get it laid out, submit the plans to me. And with this, I had spoken with Kirk about applying for the special permit. With that, we got the special permit signed by the owner of the company, of the building, and won't submit the special permit application until the traffic report is complete. The engineering report is complete.
So do we want to submit it to town council for his review and
I
see
think
what comes back from
I think-
Tom Muller?
I think we definitely do.
Yes, definitely.
Dave?
Yeah, no, I have no problem. In other words, I think we're into it halfway now. And, it can have some opposition to marijuana, but Georgetown's got it already. I'm sure every town around's gonna have it. And, obviously with our financial situation, we can certainly use some help with the money.
Yeah, on that point, what is the process for getting that tax established? Is that a town meeting vote? Or then it has to go?
If you could allow me to get you that information, I'd be happy to find out
Okay.
what you need to do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something the state collects and then they reimburse us.
That's exactly how it goes.
I think that's probably how it works. I mean,
I'll get you the information.
I'm not opposed myself to, I would have no opposition, particularly if we're doing medical ed. And I've seen the one in Georgetown, they're only doing medical at this point, but I wouldn't even know it's there, basically, so. It is what it is.
Yes. Brandon?
Yes, I'm just puzzled, if there is a delivery system, then how do you attribute the revenue to this site as opposed to other sites?
It's the call comes in to the site and it's recorded, and there's a reporting system for every sale that you do. The state insists that every sale that you make, this product is literally tracked from the moment that it sprouts. There's a barcode, a tag that goes on it. It's continuously weighed all the way out to a sale, and so the phone call comes in, it's logged, they want a delivery, and it gets tracked right into the state system so that we know exactly where it came from, how much, to whom it went out. All that information is freely
So
available.
if the individual is
The
a,
revenue is tied to
this site.
location of the sale.
Yes,
So
That's site-specific, correct.
yes.
Now, does the town get records?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In other words, we had X amount of sales,
Correct.
Yeah.
25% were in the store, 35% were,
Yeah.
or whatever the
Same
percentage
records that
would
we
be.
provide to the
So-
state, we
That's right.
provide to you.
So we would know exactly what
You'll know.
Same as
what the
what the
level of
common
business is and the level of deliveries versus.
Yes. Yeah. We usually write into the host agreement how you can audit what we're doing. We're happy to provide those records to you.
I'd like a motion to ask Tom Mullen, our town council, to review the host agreement.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We will review it. We will send it to our town council for review,
Great.
and we will schedule another meeting with you.
And once you've got the traffic study and stuff, you're gonna be simultaneously going to the planning board, is that what I assume you're saying?
Yes,
Yes.
yes. They want a new traffic study.
Right,
on
yeah,
that.
okay, that's
So,
fine.
I've been to the health department also, because of the number of personnel
Sure,
working versus the septic and all that,
Right.
so the
Okay.
timeframe of their employment versus.
very good.
they have it. So,
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
I know.
Thank you.
Bye now.
I meant to do this right after I called the meeting to order, but if the board will indulge me, I went out on a date Friday night with my wife, and we went up to Triton.
Congratulations.
High School.
Mention the wife.
We went up to Triton High School, and we saw a production of, from Pine Grove School, of Cinderella, the musical. And the kids were fantastic. The music was great, and the production, the dancing, everything. They did a really fantastic job, and we had a great time at the presentation. And I'd just like to congratulate them for doing such a wonderful job. Thank you. Okay. Old business, number 1, update on the Pine Grove School project. We have a very important issue tonight to discuss the purchase of technology equipment. Chairman Perry is asking the Board of Selectmen to approve a technology purchase for the Pine Grove School project. This is part of the FF&E, the furniture, fixtures, and equipment portion of the project. Attached is a letter from the Pine Grove School, OPM, the owner's project manager, Larry Berger, from Pink, recommending the purchase of wireless access points and network switches. Chairman Perry will read the letter into the record. Town of Raleigh, Board of Selectmen, Joseph Perry, Chairman, 191 Main Street, Raleigh, Mass. 01969, regarding Pine Grove School technology purchase. Dear Chairman Perry, as a component to the overall renovation for Pine Grove School, a complete technology upgrade is planned. The upgrade will be in the form of new teaching equipment for the students and staff, as well as the technology that drives these devices. Working with the architect, his technology consultant, the Triton School District's network administrator, and the project working group, the teaching needs have been identified and equipment to meet those needs examined. From these discussions, the identified equipment has been priced through vendors identified as awarded company under the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Operational Services Division, OSD. Pricing was received and reviewed by the district, our technology consultant, and discussed with the working group. It is our recommendation as OPM, based on the discussions and the information provided by SHI International Corp., to supply wireless access points and network switches as enumerated in their proposal dated January 26, 2018, be accepted and a purchase order be issued for the described materials in the amount of $137,478.07. Sincerely, Larry R. Berger. Let's see, the purchase will be through the state contract number ITC 447 as follows. SHI quotation number 147049333, Aruba Wireless Access Point, amount $71,922.98. SHI quotation number 146-14517, Aruba chassis with 2,930 Ms at edge, IDFS, amount $65,555.09. If the board is in agreement, please vote to authorize Debbie to issue purchase orders to SHI for the above items in the amount specified above for a total of $137,478.07.
Just one quick question. This is not related to the dispute with the Dorn
This is
Whittier
not.
on this. This is an entirely different
Right.
subject. Okay.
This is the purchase of equipment not
Okay.
related to the dispute.
Very good.
I have a question, Joe. Has this been through a competitive bidding process, or this is something that we're approving as a sole source or
No,
whatever?
it's a state, you're purchasing it off the state bid list, right?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is not a sole source procurement. It has actually been Advanced, the technology consultant working for Dorr and Whittier, in conjunction with the Triton IT director, Matthew Lakos, went and they, on the state contracts, and they actually did the procurement, looking at the competitive pricing off all the vendors on the state list. And that's actually, we're purchasing directly from the contract, ITC 47,
Okay.
from the Operational Services Division.
It's the same way we buy vehicles and stuff like that, too. Right off, the state has a list of all the different things, and rather than go out to bid yourself, you can use their specs.
There was a request for
Yeah.
proposals issued to the vendors on the state list under the state contract for the competitive.
So it's perfectly legal. That was not.
I did have to make inquiries exactly as you have said, Mr. Pierce.
From the technical side, it's much better to go Wi-Fi than it is to go hardwire. Because hardwire would cost a lot more money to put the wire through the ceilings and conduits and
Oh, yeah.
such. So, I mean, everything you do today, I mean, I don't know how your house is, but, you know, if you have a router, you do all your updates on your computer and everything else through Wi-Fi. It's fast as anything, fast as a water system.
I'll give you a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to allow Debbie to issue the purchase order to SHI for the above cited items. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The project continues to stay on course. I'm very happy with that and within the timeline. Trade and non-trade bidding is scheduled to start this week. The building committee is scheduled to meet this Thursday. That, by the way, is a savings of over $20,000 by getting that out this week
Okay, good.
on that item alone. Okay. February 5th, 2018, old business number 2, update on fire station and police station addition project. Things are continuing to move forward on this project. David?
Yeah, no, pretty much, they've cut all the trees, removed them, the trailers have been moved in, and we're just working with a contractor. National Grid's gonna be putting in, they gotta move the gas line to a new location, and so on and so forth, so it's moving along.
Is that hooked up to the police station?
Yeah, well, they
now?
gotta move the way it goes in, because it's gonna be for police and fire.
Any questions?
Other than that,
Larry?
I was wondering, I've been by there and noticed all the trees cut. I can see on, if you're looking at the police station on the right-hand side, but why were all the trees cut on the left-hand side?
the addition's going on the left-hand side.
Okay.
Yeah, in other words, when you look at the police station now, the new building will be on the left of the current police station.
Okay.
The driveway's gonna be in between, to the right of the police station, and then,
And the fire station
then the
will be-
fire station will be over to the right of
Thank
that.
Okay, moving on. Discuss fiscal year 19 Triton budget development and projected town assessment. The Triton District Communications Committee distributed a sheet on fiscal year 19 budget assessment scenarios during their meeting last Thursday. The sheets, actually, are attached. The board needs to discuss and review the sheet. The school committee is holding a fiscal year 19 budget meeting and public hearing this Wednesday night, February 7th, 2018, at 7 p.m. at the Triton High School Library. The town's share of the Triton assessment has significant impact on the town's ability to set the municipal budget. Until that assessment number is known, it is hard to set the municipal budget. We also need to plan for the Whittier and Essex Tech assessment. And we received the sheets, Michelle Tresta? Tresta. Thank you. Gave us the first sheets, Annex 1, and went through where their monies, where the increases came from. And it came to a total of $3,046,188. And if you go on to Annex 2, I guess I have the colorful page. Yeah. You have Scenario 1, Scenario 2, Scenario 3, and Dave and Larry were with me up at Triton, and I was very pleased that when we went through the numbers for scenario number 1, that I spoke up and said that we could not accept the figures in scenario number 1, and Salisbury also agreed that almost a $1.2 million increase for the town was unacceptable. Scenario 2 brings us to a 3.63 increase, which reduces the salary assessment to $423,841, which is, again, as Larry pointed out earlier, I believe, that it takes 100% of our end of actually a few dollars more than our Prop 2.5 increase and our new growth increase. They also came up with scenario number 3, and that comes down to, we sent a letter to the school committee, and we were the only one of the 3 towns to send a letter to stipulate what we had available and what we could use for out of the projected increases for the town for fiscal 19, and our increase that we offered was $200,064, which is shown in scenario number 3. But if you look at the very bottom of the page, it has the impact of the cut scenarios. Scenario number 1, the number of staff cut is 0. There are no cuts required for those figures, which are totally unacceptable. Scenario number 2, number of staff cut is 36, and you take $1,631,188 divided by 45,000, which is approximate figure for laying off the teachers. 36.24 teachers would come up to 1.6 million. Scenario number 3 would mean a staff cut of 51. I say teachers, but it's staff. staff cut of 51, and that would reduce it by 2.3 million to get down to that figure. Again, David spoke, I spoke, and we did agree that we would not even consider scenario number 1, and that as far, I thought we made mention of the fact that scenario number 2, where it did take over 100% of our increase, was still high. Comments?
Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering on scenario 1, it says, it talks about an increase of 8.02%, but then at the bottom of that chart, the difference, oh, that's the difference, okay. Is a 10.4% increase. So is that a contradiction, 8% versus 10.4%?
There does seem to be a percentage difference between, all of them. They're calculating it against a different figure.
Different way, I guess, huh?
Yeah.
It's because of the state contribution. One percentage is on what we're paying, and the other one, the higher one is on what we're paying.
Okay.
The lower one is the budget as a total.
Oh, the higher one is on Rowley's assessment.
Yes.
Or the-
Thank you.
At least that's my recollection of the discussion.
So it's 10%, and that's an unsustainable increase if that happens every year.
Yes. Yes. Any comments? Anybody going on Wednesday night for the public hearing?
What time is it Wednesday night?
7 o'clock?
7 o'clock.
I have a
And they're
meeting.
talking about a snow event?
Oh, really?
Snow event, snowstorm? A snow event. Sound like a weatherman now. But I understand a snowstorm on,
We have a snow event every Monday night.
yes, yeah, I guess you would say that.
Did you want to comment?
Yes, I just wanted to point out again that even under scenario 2, all Rowley is doing is collecting the new taxes, 2.5%, and paying it all to Triton. We're not getting any benefit from it. And even though they look at it and say, well,
Well, there's benefit to us, it goes to the school, so that is a benefit to the town of Rowley, so I mean, I think I have to disagree with that on that point. You said that before, it's not totally true.
it's a benefit to Rowley for people who have children in the school, okay, and it benefits them for 12 years, okay, as opposed to if they're a lifelong resident, maybe 20 to 40 years that they're paying this thing off. Under scenario 2, they're saying they lose 36 teachers. We can also look at it like if we're paying all of this stuff, for every teacher that they keep on, we're losing a policeman or a fireman or a library person or a highway person. It's not that we're just losing money, we're losing people too, okay? So you can't look at it like we are losing money and Triton is gaining people. They can cut their class sizes from 16 to 25, okay, and not have a deleterious effect on the whole situation. They're paying cost of living increases on stipends as well as their salaries. On stipends. It's ridiculous. Because they're paying a lot, okay, and fine, they negotiated it. They come up with the money. You know, they might write the check, but it's our money that's being spent. Rowley's money, and it's the whole town's money. And the whole town has to realize that Rowley is not just Triton. If you want services, if you want your snow removed, you're going to have to pay for it. Okay. you're not going to pay for it by having 16 kids in grade 1 versus 23, 24.
We also have to take into consideration that we have town employees. We have to offer, we've been offering no budget increases and very little increases on step raises for the number of years. In fact, I can remember 7 years ago when I sat out there, and I remember that there was a very tight budget year, and the proposal was that we'd cut every department by a percentage, and they cut my salary before I got onto the Board of Selectmen that year. So that every department has had the cuts, and we have to take care of our employees. We just can't give every dollar to Triton.
And like I said, for this year, okay, the expenses for the whole town of Rowley went up by $20,911
For the whole town.
for the whole town.
Yep.
And that's including your veterans benefits, your snow removal, everything else
Yep.
went up and down. Total increase, $20,000. I'm sure that it's been about the similar thing for the last couple of years. But, I mean, we have been suffering.
The,
Rowley has been.
the year that Joe was talking about, I was chairman of the board, and I had to bring all departments upstairs and tell them that they had a cut across the board, and there would be no department spared. Okay? It was right across the board.
Yep.
And it was a sleepless nights for me that particular year, believe me, trying to keep it afloat, our town. Now, I know there was negotiations with the teachers and everything else, and coming forward this year. There's only so much money that the town has, and I would hope that there was thought about what does the town have, what do the towns have to be able to sustain a pay raise like this? Because here at this table, when we talk about the employees, we have to take that into consideration. How much money do we have that we can give a pay raise to our employees? So I'm kind of disheartened when I read about, I understand everybody wants a pay raise, but the towns don't have the money to sustain this. And now we're in a predicament. More than we're in a pickle, that's what we're in. And, between the schools and the town.
Bertie?
Yeah, I have a couple of points. One is, I think somebody should look carefully at the calculations of what the reduction in staffing would actually be, given the reduction in the budget. Because I think that number is, the 36 is on the high side. That's the first point. The second point is that this isn't we're up against it this year.
Yes.
But we really have to kind of keep our heads up and think about the following 2 years, because the contract has baked those increases in. And so even now, we know what the may not know down to the last penny, and you may not know down to the last $100,000 in terms of all the pluses and minuses from the state and other changes. But the big whale in the room, the big elephant in the room, is very clear what that's going to be. It was very clear last year, right at the beginning. And so whatever we obviously have to deal with the alligator closest to the boat, to carry the animal metaphor further, elephants. But in real terms, it's a train wreck, because we're going to get a very similar increase, slightly lower, but it's a slightly lower percentage, but on a higher base next year, and a slightly lower percentage, but on a higher base the following year. So we already know we ought to already know what those dollar numbers are, and more importantly, the school administration needs to know what those are, and they need to essentially recognize what the constraints are. I mean, what was stunning at the meeting, because I was there, and both Dave and Joe and Larry did a great job in terms of presenting Rowley's case. They asked a simple question of Brian, and that was, did you know what the ability of the three communities was to pay? And it was like, the question was like a surprise question. It was like it was a different way of looking at the universe, to basically say, did you understand how much your three constituent communities can afford to pay? And that question should have been on the table at the time of the negotiations. That's water under the bridge. We're essentially saddled, as far as I understand, we're saddled with the contract as it's written. That means the only degree of freedom that the school administration has to come to terms with the realities of the three communities is head count. Nothing else. It comes down to head count, and they need to, if I was in their shoes, I'd be planning, seriously looking at the out years in terms of what that means, and who, essentially what programs you're going to have to put in place in order to get the numbers of teachers down. No other solution.
When the budget is put here at the table for the town, okay? And I've said it before, and everybody's heard it, we're a lean, mean town. There's no extravagance here. I mean, when all of us at this table have sat here and done the budget, we start out here, and then we end up here running the town. What's actually running the town? Very small proportion of the overall budget. And this worries me when I hear what that question was proposed, and
Yeah. I just wanted to.
And when I hear this, I get a little agita here in my stomach. It's really, it's unbelievable when I hear something like that. Michelle?
Narissa?
Yes. I was just going to say, all due respect, Bernie, I think that was a mistake on what was going on in that particular instance. Because Mr. White had actually come to the finance subcommittee meeting for the school committee, and he had actually said, why don't you propose this? And we had had lengthy discussions during the finance subcommittee. We had lengthy discussions during a full school committee meeting, which you can watch online. And I believe that instance was all of us kind of looking at each other and saying, we've had this conversation. And unfortunately, when it comes down to it, it goes both ways. We can ask for that. We really, given Salisbury's response, they didn't know. We know approximately what Rowley's is. Rowley's every year is approximately $400,000, and every year we know it's about half. Newbury's is $600,000, and we know every year it's roughly about half. Mr. White's point was that we should make a verbal, discussion of this point, and the school committee went back and forth over and over again about, do you ask that question, do you not ask that question? Because it's kind of already said, and do we really need to be having this conversation? So I think that was what was going on in that moment, was not, Brian saying, why didn't we ask this question? It was literally all of us kind of looking at each other and saying, we've had this conversation over and over again, and I guess there is no right answer as to whether you ask that question, do you not ask that question?
Well, my concern isn't so much the asking of the question, it's the Triton superintendent, the Triton administration should know that the aggregate amount of money that can come from the three communities, new money, is in the order of 1 to 1.5 million, period. It's not rocket science, it's very simple.
I'm sure they've all heard about Proposition 2.5, so, didn't.
Well, you would not know that if you were landed from another state and observed the school committee, those discussions. You would not know that there was an ironclad restraint on the towns and how much money they can raise. I would defy anybody to point to evidence that suggests that the members of the school committee, with all due respect, because I know everybody's working hard and they've got the right intentions, but this is kind of like cold, hard numbers. It's very simple. 1.5 million for the 3 communities, that's the limit. And that's the limit going into the union negotiations. And that was it clearly hasn't had, if it was understood, it clearly had no impact on those negotiations, because we got saddled with a massive increase.
It isn't even 1.5 million.
It's 3.
Between Raleigh and Newbury, it's half a million, and in Salisbury, it's probably another 400. So say $1 million max. But I think what we're running into here is, and I don't have the figures with me tonight, but the last 3 years, we've debated the school budget. And every year it's been well over what we set aside in new growth and Prop 2.5 money. And every year we've made up the difference. Number one, the towns were not really working together. The way the budget process works is if 2 towns pass the budget and the third one doesn't, the third one's stuck with that budget anyway. The last 2 years, Newbury, we actually got a decrease in the assessment because of the way the student numbers worked out. This year, the student numbers worked out in such a way that we're back to more or less an equal assessment between the 3 towns. My concern was, when I brought up the subject the other night, and I'm sort of the way you guys are talking is, it was when I bargained here and Joe did the recent contract. We say, okay, we have say $100,000 for salaries. How you take that is, if you want a stipend, if you want a raise, if you want whatever, that's the amount we have, and we bargain, we talk until we come to an agreement at that $100,000.
That's it? That's it all?
And the school administration could easily determine in general figures what the budget increase can afford to be. We've given our employees for the last 5 or 6 years a 1.25% step raise, a 1% cost of living increase for 2.25%, and occasionally with some of the union contracts there might be a stipend increase or something like that, but there are very few other increases. And looking at the school contract, this year here, the teachers are getting a 2.75% increase on the current almost $1 million that they're spending on salaries. It's a 2.75% raise. On top of that, a good portion, and I don't know what the proportion, I don't know if I asked it the other night or not, but probably half the teachers are getting a step increase, which is somewhere, give or take, 2%. So half the school population's getting a raise of, at least half anyway, of 4.75%, and those teachers that are above the salary scale, over the 11 steps in the salary scale, they're getting anywhere between 3 and, I believe it was 3, I might be mistaken in the exact numbers, but $3,000 and $5,000 in longevity. We give out longevity of $500 or something along that line. So, but knowing from last year's budget that if Rowley had 200 and whatever we had last year, 200 and something thousand, that we're not going to have a lot more than that this year, a little bit more than we had last year, because 2.5 increases a little bit. And new growth is, some years it's high, some years it's low. We never know for sure until the assessors get back to us what the new growth figure is. So I'm just a little surprised that, granted the last 2 years, we made up, if you put the last 3 years' budgets together, we made up the difference in what we had versus what we owed by taking from free cash. So we invested over $600,000 of our free cash in the last 3 years. Well, that's like taking money out of the bank that we no longer have. And when you, as anyone knows who does budgeting, when you take budget money, your operating budget out of a one-time money, your number one, your budget the next year is overinflated because you use free cash to budget.
Yep.
And you've also lost whatever, in our case, say $200,000, $300,000 a year from free cash that we can't carry over to the next year. So for the last 2 years, we've been getting by managing to fund the budget. And with Newbury having a decrease, there was no way they were going to vote down the budget. And Salisbury makes, they're a much larger community with a much larger business district and a tax base is much larger. They can obviously afford a lot more money than we can based on the town's makeup. So I'm wondering, and I'm just throwing this out, I have no idea, but because we've been able to come up with the money the last 2 years, my guess is that the administration didn't even think about it. I mean, to come up with $1 million in raises, and if it's almost $1 million this year, next year it's going to be almost another $1 million. Well, if you divide $1 million 3 ways, we're behind the 8 ball already. And my suggestion the other night was it's time to, and what should have been done, I think, during the bargaining, was say to the teachers, look, things are tough. I mean, you go out in the private sector, you find me anybody that's getting 3, 4, 5% raises. It isn't happening. Maybe under the new president's tax cut, something's going to happen, but certainly wasn't happening on the other system. And as much as it's shocking to say we're going to cut 36 personnel into one or 51 into the other, but we do not have the money. If we have to go back into free cash again, we don't know at this point what our free cash is going to be. But, I mean, we cannot operate on stealing money from free cash every year to fund the schools. And it's just a matter of whether it's this year or next year. Maybe it won't be till next year, whatever we decide this year. But we're going to be laying off a police officer, a fireman, closing the library for 20 extra hours a week, or laying off one of our 3 highway workers or something. Or we're going to, go to the state and say, hey, we're bankrupt. We can't do it. I mean, it isn't like, I don't think anybody here wants to cut education money, but we just do not have the money. We don't have a magic genie on the table here that's going to spit out the kind of money that we're looking for here. And like going to the budget meeting Wednesday night, I mean, I've been up there the last 3 school committee meetings. We've discussed this over and over. I don't see that we've made any real progress in getting our point across, and I'm afraid we're going to get saddled with a huge increase again. And my guess is Wednesday night when they have a budget meeting with parents, and the parents all want, you tell someone their child is going to be in a class of 25 instead of a class of 18, they're going to be screaming. So I don't see any reason why I'm going to attend that meeting and just listen to. I mean, I'm in sympathy with the parents, and I'm in sympathy with everybody, but we're the ones that have to come up with the money, and there is no money. And, it's just, I don't know how we're going to do it. If we get saddled with, say they do scenario 2, which would give us a $423,000 increase, like Larry says, that takes up every bit of our increase in money, and we'll have to draw out of free cash to make any increases we got. And it's just it's a losing proposition at this point to keep doing this every year. We've done it the last 2 years, and we probably did it before that. My memory fades from before that time. But we're in a bind, and we're not trying to be difficult here. We're not trying to be mean to the school system. But do we go around to every resident and ask them to fork up $10,000 to put into the school? I don't know. I mean, it's just. We talked about the other night about having an override or something, but, if you try for an override, number one, we all admitted that with the overrides we've had the last few years, it's almost impossible. And the other 2 towns agreed that the override situation is just about a negligible issue in all 3 towns. So we're going to have to wait and see, number one, what the other 2 towns are going to do, because as 2 out of 3 towns pass it, we're stuck with it anyway. And then we'll have to see what the school committee does with, how much are they gonna cut? They've got to make some cuts. I mean, they absolutely have to get down to scenario number 2. I don't see any way around not at least doing that and getting down a little bit below that anyway. If they're gonna have any hope of getting the budgets through the 3 towns. And I have no qualms about saying, voting it, when we put the budget together, to say, okay, we'll give them the 2.5, half of the 2.5 increase and half of the new, and put that on the town meeting warrant and vote that, which would mean we vote down the Triton budget, but we'll have money to pay ultimately we'll have to pay 1/12 if the budget doesn't pass, and then at the end of the year, if, we have to, we'll come up with some money some other way, but at this point, I'm usually pretty easygoing with these kinds of things, that we just have to stand tall and say, hey, we can't do it.
And when you look at it, at this town, we don't have that many employees.
No, we don't.
I mean, when I say this is a lean operation, this is really a lean operation. If you had to sit here and do the budget like we have to, it's, cuts like we're talking about, for the town, services would be curtailed to, would be
Well,
emergency.
What you're talking about,
situation.
Bob, is, the police department is a large expenditure in this town.
Yeah.
And if we have to lay off 2 police officers to equal the budget, that means the midnight shift is gonna have 1 person out by themselves
That's right.
Yep.
almost every night of the week.
And you
We close the
understand,
library, we'll close the library
if
for,
there's a situation, the police officer goes to that
Yeah, he goes in.
location, but he can't go in until he has a backup.
Right.
So you have to call to another town to get backup.
and if the library, you close the library 20 hours,
Yes.
the people being here jumping all over us, plus if you start cutting back the library, the state comes
The
down.
state
on us
regulations on
And
down
says,
on
well,
us.
no, you can't, we're gonna penalize you even more because you didn't increase the budget.
That's what we had a couple of
Therefore,
years ago.
yeah, therefore, we're gonna cut your state aid to the library. So, I mean, so now you're going, oh my God, what are we gonna, but I mean,
The only glimmer of hope that I heard on Wednesday night, and I only put it out because I heard it from somebody, I don't know how they would implement it, but there could be some consideration that the teachers might be amenable to reducing their amount so that they could save some jobs and get down to a better number than 36 and come up with the figures
Yeah.
for scenario 2. But as you said, it's very important that scenario 2 figures are still too high.
yeah, and I think that people better realize that one way or the other, there's gonna be layoffs. I mean, there's no way that the 3 towns can afford $3 million increase.
Yep.
The best they can hope for is if 2 out of 3 towns vote for the scenario 2, which means we'll still owe 200,000 above, assuming we don't pass the budget, and we'll have to make that 200,000 up some other way. And obviously, the 3rd scenario is basically, they're gonna lose 51 teachers. But I mean, there's gonna be layoffs. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But I'm waiting to see. So far, I don't think the school committee's come to the realization that they're gonna be, I didn't get any impression the other night that they were looking at figuring out how to, voting for a budget that was gonna be for layoffs. And I think Wednesday night, if parents are watching, they're gonna be up there in droves saying, don't cut my class. And it's, cut them up there, but don't cut us here, and which is gonna be tough for them to listen to. But like I say, I'll find out after the meeting what's going on, but I've been up there for three meetings in a row.
Yep.
And I really haven't come away with any great satisfaction that we're being heard, so.
Bernie?
Yeah, and again, I think this is a little tricky, but we have to deal with this coming year's budget. But I think we need to keep the eye on those 2 out years, because the same
Yes.
is going to be worse. So whatever the solution that we take for this coming year needs to make it easier to solve it in the subsequent years, rather than we may be able to pull it off this one year, but it's going to make it that much worse in the subsequent years. So the notion of having overrides, for example, that means you're gonna have an override next year and
No,
the year
no, the
after as
override
well.
goes forever, so it's, once you've done that, at that
Well,
point.
No, but
But
what
the
he, but what,
increase is
no,
gonna
what
be
Bernie
on
is
that
saying
year.
is that next year, we're going to have another budget increase, and we're going to have to put
Of a similar
another
magnitude.
override on.
And understand that
To
when
fund
we
it.
talk about an override, it's not like an override for a fire engine. You have an override for a fire engine, for so
No,
many
I-
years.
I understand.
You know, for increase in the school, it's forever.
The mistake we've made is we funded the budget for the last 2 or 3 years
Yeah.
out of free cash, and this year, and what's happened is because we've been able to do that, the next year's budget, like Bernie's saying, is that much higher. Oh, they'll come up with the money. I think the attitude is, oh, they'll come up with the money. They're hiding it somewhere over there, and if we give them the budget, they're gonna be able to fund it. Well,
I don't think we should
we've
attribute
run out of
anything
room
the
to
way
fund
they're
it.
thinking. I think what we need to do is put the facts on the table and really ask them to come to grips with those. facts.
yeah,
'Cause
exactly.
We're not gonna choose which teachers, we're
No.
not gonna choose which positions. They have to make those, but they have to have a time horizon of 3 years instead of this cockamamie 1 year, which sorry.
Narissa?
I just wanted to speak, well, I want to speak to a number of points here. But one point to that is, I believe it's 1.285 of this budget is special education increases. There was no dream that we were going to see that number. I mean, that's unheard of. Last year, I think we went down about $400,000 in special ed increases. It goes up, it goes down. There was no idea that this was going to happen. This is also the largest health insurance increase that we've seen in years. Didn't know that was coming either. So while I'll definitely acknowledge that the teachers' COLAs are a piece of it, there's this other piece that
Yeah.
it's a good chance that it's not going to occur next year. It's not going to occur the year after that because, I mean, there's no reason that it's happening this year other than it's all, it all came together. We heard Brian say it's move-ins that cause those special ed increases by and large. It's not forecastable. We don't necessarily know that those students are coming in. I'll also say that 17 and 18 is not a typical classroom. Most of the classrooms in the elementary schools are in the low 20s already. So you're looking at going up from there. It's not like you're going to cut 51 teachers and have 25 kids in a classroom. I don't know where those teachers would get cut, but it's not going to be 25 kids in a classroom. You're looking at numbers that are probably going to be significantly higher than that. I will also say that I believe it's 11 years that we've made at least some sort of cut. Last year it was the late buses. We have parents and grandparents telling us that their kids can't take part in after-school activities. It was $100,000 that we had to come up with. We had to cut a teacher at Newbury Elementary. They weren't able to get their second special ed teacher, which we brought in this year. Somebody asked about the special education program that we tried to put in last year so that it would hopefully help us save money in the future so we wouldn't have to put students out of district. It didn't go through because there wasn't the funding for this. So I'm just making the point as well that this isn't a situation where there's opulence going on over there. There are no gold gilded toilets.
Well, the only thing, Narissa, is that, if our insurance rates go up 15%, we've got to take it out of the town budget somewhere. If we don't have it, then we make cutbacks. Price of gas is up at the gas station right now, probably $0.50 a gallon higher than what it was last year at this time. I don't know the exact figure for sure, but there's another one where, we don't have any way to figure that out, but if the police chief and the highway guy and all these people that have vehicles, they got to stretch that money. And I think what we get here is the feeling that any increase that you get, the best, we're not looking at any cutbacks here. In terms of, we need 3 million, that's what we're gonna just add that on because our expenses are higher. Well, our expenses are higher too. And when our expenses go up, we have to cut back on something. And we're getting, and that's why, I guess that's my point is, we're getting to the point where if we have to give all this money to the school, and our insurance rates go up 11% or 12%, whatever it's gonna be, and the price of gas is up, and, heating oil, whatever the expenses are. I mean, we've told all our departments that, no increase in expenses unless it's an emergency. So, I mean, we're eating our increase in expenses and costs. You're passing yours on to us without even a thought about how we're gonna pay for it.
Well, I don't
It's very
know.
frustrating
I would agree with
because-
Marissa. I don't think it's fair without a thought. But the issue is there's not enough thought. And
Yeah,
there's not
I mean-
enough real problem solving to try and figure out, because again, absolutely, those were surprises. I remember the drop of 400,000 last year, and we were cheering, basically, because, that saved a lot of hard decision-making. But if you've got, in your budget, you've got an area which is that volatile, then you need to plan around the volatility of that area. And what I've seen from, observe, this is the third year I've watched the Triton School budget process. And it's an incremental budget. That means there's no real substantive step back and say, the towns aren't going to be able to afford it, we need to kind of reconsider a whole bunch of things from the ground up, because this is not sustainable, and it clearly isn't. Now, and again, that's why I'm emphasizing the point that you've got to think about not only this year, but next year and the year after. And so some really hard thinking has to be done within a very short period of time before the town meeting.
And
So I don't mean to.
looking, I've been here for 10 years, sitting here. There's been no large commercial expansion, okay, in our commercial base. There has been no new revenue source that has come into the town with, adding dollars to our revenue. It's just not there. We're basically the same town that we were 10 years ago. And, that's what everybody has, I don't want to preach to the school committee, okay, but the town hasn't changed. And we still lean as we ever have with the number of employees. It's not extravagant at all. When you really get on the nitty-gritty of how we run the town, it's on a shoestring, really.
Debbie?
Mr. Chairman, and maybe we can direct this question through you to Ms. Wallen. What is the revenue on the Triton Stadium? There was supposed to be a substantial amount of leasing that out or renting that out to organizations for lacrosse and soccer and bringing in all kinds of revenue to that. What do we know what that revenue amount is and how often that facility is being rented?
It was. You should have actually received the certification, I think. It was just voted through.
I don't know.
Maybe it was in January, so maybe it hasn't come through yet. So it was low this year, and the main reason it was low this year was because we had part of it was the issues with there was I believe it was a fill issue that caused all the tracks to crack, and they're coming in, they've actually put in GPS monitoring systems of some sort, and they're coming back in to fix those. So there was an issue with the actual use of the field. The other piece of it was that they couldn't get custodians from Triton, who by contract were the only ones who could actually come in the off hours for when the stadium was used, because they're required to have a custodian there at the time when the stadium's rented. So they missed some opportunities. There is a rugby league that's looking to use it as their home stadium, and that could be starting within the next month or so, or a couple of months, I guess, since they won't be available until probably April. And there is a marching band or some sort of thing along that line that's looking to use it as a rental as well. So it's coming up, but we had to deal with the issues, the structural issues and the contractual issues first.
So how much was the revenue?
Oh, I want to say it was $3,700 for the fall.
Versus 40,000 projected.
For a year.
I would say I rent fields for soccer teams, and the $40,000 was an unrealistic number as far as I can. I mean, you'd have to be renting that on a basically multiple times each available day in order to get close to that number. Because it's about $150 an hour is the rental for a field. So it's $300 for essentially a soccer game. So that's.
But the only way that affects the budget is,
Well,
it
it's
just doesn't
enormous.
reduce it doesn't reduce the payment that each town makes, you know, with any anticipated revenue is going to reduce the assessment for each town for the stadium override, that's what it was for. No, most of the time, it's like any building you build, there's always projected these big savings, and, you know, we're gonna build a new building and save on heat because of the increase in, you know, insulation and all that, and invariably, when you get the building built, it ends up being more. Then it just, some of those projections, they're nice to hear, but they don't seem to work out in most cases, but. No, I just think, you know, bring it back to the school committee. I mean, I think you've heard us that we don't have the money. As far as I'm concerned, I'm voting for scenario 3. And it's not because I want to, but it's because I have to, because we don't have any more money than scenario 3. And if it, you know, ended up being something a little bit higher than scenario 3, I'm sure we could probably work something out. But at this point, scenario 2 is twice as much as we have, and it strips us of everything we got. So, I mean, I think that, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I don't think there's much sympathy here for, at this point, this is the 3rd year in a row that we've gone through this. And every year we've, you know, managed to swing by and do the funding, but we're broke. I mean, I couldn't run my household this way. I don't think any of us could.
Yep.
And it's just, and I know the state, a lot of it's state, we've talked about the special ed, the state absolutely should be picking up most of the tab for special ed, but they're not. The amount of money that Triton gets is from the state is lower than it was 15 years ago, but at the same time, so isn't our money. Our money from the state is down as low as it was 15 years ago. So there's nobody out there helping any of us. And I guess the point we're trying to make is we all have to pull our belt in, and if it means 27, 28 kids in the classroom, well, maybe that's the way it's going to be. And then next year, parents, if they don't like it, will vote an override. But, you know, I just don't know. I mean, somehow everybody talks about cuts, but the cuts never come. And I think the taxpayers out there and the parents out there don't say, "Oh, they're just talking about cuts." They don't. They always come up with the money. And I think this year we can't. We got to hold our ground and because like Bernie says, we're going to face, with the figures we got from the contract alone, we're going to face exactly the same thing next year.
And what the taxpayer has to understand also, and this is the reason we're adamant about this, next year or the year after, the school and the fire station will come to your tax bill.
Yep.
And if this additional coming on this year, sticker shock will be.
Yeah, I haven't even got a figure for what, if we put the increase on for just an override, and the override was passed, I can't imagine what the tax increase would be.
Yes.
Just to fund the override.
The next 3 years will be astronomical. It will be, you know, it'll take your breath away, the tax bill.
Yeah, we just started borrowing for both those projects, so when they're fully done in about 3 years, the full cost of those buildings are going to be on and it's probably $700 or $800 per household for just those two projects. Maybe more. I don't know for sure.
These projects had to be done because our infrastructure was falling apart. And it, you know, been kicked to the side for years.
You know, people need to understand that, you know, like I say, I think the mistake we've made here is that the last 2 years and working with the other towns, that our backs have been against the wall, and we've had to strip our extra money to pay, and we just can't do it anymore. We might end up doing it anyway if the other two towns vote the budget and we don't, but at least we've done as much as we can to say, look, we can't make it.
I just have a couple more points. Sorry, Joe. Just to Bernie, I wanted to make a point that there is actually a method in state law. We could establish a special ed stabilization fund. Many of the municipal districts do it. And basically, when we had saved the $400,000 last year, that would have gotten banked into the special ed stabilization fund that would have offset this year. We understand, being a regional district, that the towns don't want us to bank that money necessarily. You want that off the operating costs so that the assessments are lower. That's why I think it's never been brought up, because no regional district really brings it up as a viable option, because we know it's generally not the direction that our member towns want to go. If that's something
But you're right, it's prudent, but if you did that in order to sell it to the town, then last year we would have had cuts in headcount.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
there are definitely vehicles that can
Yes, no,
be put
that
in
makes,
place.
that makes
It's just
sense. I
not-
mean, it's like a sinking fund. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
So particularly if you've got a track record of knowing the ups and downs, and that could make it much easier for the school committee to sell the investment in more in-house assessment to kind of control those costs. But that's not where we are.
so that's probably how they cut the budget last year, where they took the 400,000
Right.
off, and we still overspent. In other words, if you're gonna save that money, which is the right idea, you gotta cut somewhere. You can't keep increasing the budget by $1 million a year when we only have $600,000 available to
Right.
increase the budget by.
You had another point?
I did have another point. Hang on, let me see if I can remember what it was real quick.
No,
Got
you're
lost in
doing
it.
great,
Oh,
Marissa.
the other thing I just wanted to say was that, two things, I guess. One is that this isn't specific to regionals. I saw a news article recently that the mayor of Worcester is looking to dip into their free cash fund for $1.9 million for the schools. It's like 25% of what they have in their free cash. So it's not, this is not just Rowley, I guess, that's feeling this pain. And that pain is coming from the state. And that's my second point, is that I know we've said it a million times, and we've gotten our representatives out there, and we've said to them, look, we really need your help. This has to turn around. We need to continue saying that. And I hope that you'll continue to come out and listen to the constituents and be able to relay that message back up. I understand 3 meetings. I feel like it's been 3 or 4 meetings a week for me for the past few weeks for the same reason, because you're trying to get out there and you're trying to listen to everyone. So I hope you'll continue to come and listen. And I hope that every chance that you get, you're on the phone, sending an email, whatever your preferred method of interaction is. But they really need to know that this has to change. We're working together with a number of other regional districts, because that's the one thing that hasn't really been done so far, is that we haven't banded together on the actual community level, trying to put all the regional district communities together so that we can take a set of actions and push them at the same time to try and get through to the governor, to try and get through to the head of the Ways and Means committees, to make sure that that message is getting through against what we heard, against that of the urban districts, which was the point that I think it was Senator Tarr or maybe Representative Hill had made during the legislative night, is it becomes these regional districts against all of the municipal districts, the urban districts.
And Marissa, I understand what you're saying about the mayor of Worcester.
Yep,
But even the mayor of Worcester can't sustain
I know.
going after free cash all the time.
Yep.
There comes a point where the free cash is gone, and,
And once it's gone, it is not replaced.
yes, and then, costs are going up, revenues are not growing. It's the old tradition of, I've talked about it before, the fishtail. There's a point where you go bankrupt.
And I absolutely agree. I mean, I am a member of the school committee. I am also a taxpayer in the town of Rowley. I love this town. I have lived here on and off since I was 7. I don't know what to say. I mean, it's, the school has gotten cuts. I feel it as a parent. The town taxes go up. I feel it as a taxpayer. Everybody's kind of stuck in the middle at this point.
Yep. One more comment.
Just on the school enrollments, I'm not going to bore everyone with all the details, but Salisbury, 18, 20, 17, 19, 22, 19, 20. Pine Grove, 20, 18, 20, 18, 24, 19, 22.
What are you
Newbury,
referencing?
17.
Class size.
These are the class sizes, 17, 19, 15, 19, 20, 21, 19. If you look at the personnel budgets, every school has 2 principal professionals, 2 principal non-professionals, not including all of their other people that they have on there. For a grade school, they need 2 math reading professionals. There are cuts to be made. Triton has to do some bloody cutting. Not going to be easy. They've postponed it for quite a while, but we can't afford it. I'm not going to approve a budget or recommend to the Finance Committee a budget that neglects the whole rest of the town to the benefit of Triton School only. The town deserves better. And Triton isn't a top 100 school.
Sorry, what does that mean?
It means that they don't deserve the continued funding for everything to the detriment of the rest of the town.
No, it's difficult time for all of us, that's for sure, so.
I think the bottom line that we'd like you to take back is that we can't afford it. We definitely can't afford it.
And thank you for coming in and putting up with our abuse.
You're running so
Well
low.
done, well
We have
done.
broad shoulders.
We can't tell you what to do, okay? That's not our job. But we can tell you what the problem is here, on this side. We don't have the revenue. We don't have the tax base to support what is, the school wants.
I understand. I think we've been, this is just speaking for myself, not for the whole committee, but I feel like we've been trying to ride this very fine line of not getting into so severe cuts that we start losing and going back on school choice and sending out millions of dollars to other districts and even more into the charter school, and also helping keep up property values, and at the same time, put as small increase on the town as we can and be able to do that. I feel like that's the line.
We've all run out of space, that's what's happened. We've all run out of space.
And I have to emphasize, the next year and the year after, the increases that the taxpayer here in Raleigh will feel because of the school and the fire police station. Those things had to have happened. We kicked that can down the road, since 2004, 2002. We would have been sitting pretty if it had
Oh, yeah.
gone past. We would have spent something like $4.2 million compared to what we're going to pay for now. And the school, we went through and we saw the infrastructure in the school. The school needed to be addressed, and the townspeople came forward. We're going to address the school. It's not like we're being a bunch of cheapskates here when it comes to the schools.
But the people, at Thursday, that when they were
You said Wednesday.
Which meeting?
proposing,
Which day?
last week,
Oh, last week.
The district
What-
communications meeting?
yes,
Okay,
Thursday night, when they were proposing the overrides, I think that, if we could look ahead, in Raleigh especially, to what our tax bills are going to be for fiscal 19, for fiscal 20, and see, do you want to put an override on adding additional taxes? I don't think that's going to pass.
No.
I don't think that's going to pass. I can't see how anybody's going to vote for that. They were very generous enough for the police and fire station, for the Pine Grove School. This isn't going to make it.
And the track.
Yeah,
field. That was another override we had, so.
Okay, are we done?
Yep.
Announcements. The Friends of the Council on Aging is sponsoring a shoe drive during the month of April at the Town Hall Annex, 39 Central Street. Paired footwear such as the following may be deposited in the container at the Annex parking lot: shoes, boots, work boots, sandals, slippers, flip-flops, heels, sneakers, pocketbooks, purses, backpacks, and belts. Information on the Pine Grove School project is available on the town's website at www.townofraleigh.net. The town meeting is scheduled for Monday, April 30th, 2018, at 7 p.m. in the Pine Grove School Gymnasium. Please note that it will be in the school gymnasium. The treasurer collector announces that the motor vehicle excise tax bills, another piece of good news, were mailed on February 2nd, 2018. The town has the following vacancies: fence viewer, 3 positions; wood lumber and back inspector; zoning board of appeals associate, 3 seats; parks and recreation committee, 1 seat; and deputy shellfish constables, 2 positions. For more information on these positions, please contact the Selectmen's office at 948-2372. The Raleigh Food Pantry is in need of donations. Donations can be left at the Raleigh Public Library. The food pantry is open on Tuesdays from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. and on Thursdays from 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m.
Mr. Chairman, I'll give you a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for your input.